This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring former FBI Special Agent and Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, Robin Dreeke.
I'm very much wondering if the alibi defense is going to be allowed in this, because that's still up for grabs. This judge, the new judge here, is the one who's ultimately going to decide that. And, you know, we've been looking at it constantly of just, what is this defense? It's not even really an alibi. It's just, he was driving around because he likes to look at the stars. Happens to be that his cell phone pings everywhere it shouldn't be pinging. That points him to being on the murder track. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it, but I'm also wondering, and try to follow along with me on this one, maybe less is more on this. If they were going to try and paint him as being somewhere else, I mean, that can be looked into and probably proven to be false, or at least have some sort of reasonable doubt that that is false. If they're not going to go down that road, as we see in so many other cases where I was over here doing this is I had to have been there. Your data's wrong. This expert's wrong. No, I was there. If you don't have any of that going on, nobody's there to argue that someone's lying. You know, he was driving around that night. That is true. He was driving around that night, likely to that house, but he was driving around that night. We can see that by the cell phone pings. So that statement itself is not actually false. It omits stopping at the house and murdering people, but there's pieces that are accurate in there, and it's less that can be argued. So I'm almost wondering if that is part of the strategy of this less is more, because there may not be anything else to argue.
Yeah, I remember when the alibi first got leaked out. Mm-hmm. By the only person that could have leaked it, I think, which is the defense attorney, Ann.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on this one. I think by saying there's an alibi defense and then having dismissed is better for defense than actually arguing it. Because, again, put yourself on the jury, and the likelihood that one of those 12 has heard about this case, if not more, is really high. I mean, you're not going to get a pure jury pool that's never heard of the case. And the probability that at least one of them heard of an alibi is also pretty high.
Yeah.
And so if it's dismissed, think about the impact of this. Well, they said there was an alibi, but we haven't heard of the alibi. What's that so? It's not beyond a reasonable doubt anymore. Well, how come I didn't hear about the alibi? It got dismissed. We can't talk about the alibi. So that's what's going on in jury pool, one of the jury members' minds. As opposed to, there's an alibi, and now Ann gets up and talks about the alibi of, here's my alibi. He was driving around that night. What? That's your alibi? You're full of it. See what I mean? I mean, so always, whatever reaction you have as you and I speaking here, as human beings, listening over here, discussing it, that's the same reaction of a jury.
Yeah.
And so I got a feeling, if she's using this the way, again, I'm doing lots of projection here, lots of conjecture at my point, but from the data points we know, she's so smart at this. I think that it was thrown out there as an alibi because everyone's not thinking alibi, because when you say alibi, you think someone saw him somewhere else. Yeah. Not some loose technology might have seen him somewhere else.
Yeah. The more I think about it, it's like, well, they can't really, I mean, you can argue that, they're omitting a piece of it, that he wasn't there, but there's not a bunch of other pieces to bring up and to bring more experts in. And honestly, I mean, it doesn't sound that extremely crazy that he was out driving around. They needed to find somebody. There was pressure on the Moscow PD to nail somebody, and they found this guy's car pinging around, and obviously a lot of other things. And they're just trying to pin it on him. It's a simple one, and they can probably show a pattern of behavior. I'm going to guess it's probably why they went with it, because he probably has driven around a lot, which also the geofencing and data and stuff also shows. He's driven around a lot at night, happens to be by the house quite a bit at night too. But if you omit that little piece, he does like to drive around at night. Maybe some of those nights he was out taking pictures of the stars before creepily going by the house. But if you can present that to the jury, it's like, maybe he is just this kid that was out driving, and just wrong circumstance, wrong timing, bad timing, but then how do you explain everything else? But they're still going to fight that. That's going to be the interesting part. If Ann Taylor can get the knife sheath out of the evidence, I think this is up in the air. That's going to be a hard battle to fight and a high hill to climb. But if that can somehow be removed, I think you have a chance of Kohberger actually succeeding in being found not guilty, because that's such a huge key piece of evidence. Of course, that's all assuming that there's not a lot of other stuff, but I'm assuming there is, because we still don't know what he Googled. We don't know what was on his hard drive and all of that. It's all sealed up. So my guess is there's a lot more there. At least if it's him, I hope there's a lot more there.
I think there's a lot more there, especially when it comes to, the DNA match. I have a hard time imagining that sheath is going to be not part of evidence. I mean, that is such,
I do too.
It's not finding the murder weapon, but it's damn close. It is the second best thing you could have is that, because there's touch DNA on it. That is powerful. The accuracy on that is very, very good.
But they've already tried arguing it. They have thrown.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Because it's a seed of doubt.
Yep.
The interesting thing, I'll be curious about their ability to do this, as you're talking about that behavior arc of Kohberger and what she's probably going to try to do with that alibi thing, is that he's displayed a pattern of behavior where he goes out for these moonlit drives and he just happened to be out on one of these things, because you and I talk about behavior arcs, and it happened to coincide coincidentally with the night of the murders. Okay, so now if I'm in the mind of the prosecutor, I'm Robin Dreeke, behaviorist, doing this. If I can actually show on that data point, so of when he actually started doing those drives at night, behaviorally, right in that same time frame, there's going to be a critical event that sent him from fantasizing to action. And so I'd be looking for that as the rationale of the behavior arc, because when you are into the world of potential serial killers, because I think that was the next step in this case, is he's going to, whether it's him or whoever is doing this, right, presumed innocent, but this was one of those types of cases that's following that arc.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that there was going to be a critical moment that sent him from the world of fantasizing not being enough to action, where I'm going to take a life, or lives in this case.
Yeah.
And so that's where, right in that little time frame right there, that's where there's going to be staking out. That's where targeting is going to be happening. And so if they can actually tie that to something in his life that happened there, some critical moment where it sent him over the edge, and where you're going to see that is interviews by family, friends, coworkers, students, where they can coincide this event. That's what I'd be really interested in seeing how deep down and far they can go down that behavior side.
I think that's what's hiding behind the curtain right now. And I think we're going to find that out in the digital forensics, on his phone, on his hard drive. There's going to be something. The fact that, he liked to journal online, years ago when he was a kid about this stuff, I'm going to say the odds are probably there that he's written about this himself.
Yes.
Maybe even journaled about the event. He seems a very detailed kind of individual, needs to kind of have that stuff drawn out. So I really wonder if we're going to find something in those files almost akin to like what we've seen with the Long Island serial killer, the allegations against Rex Heuermann, where it was like detailed instructions on what to do.
High probability. It's a high probability because what we had here this wasn't random. Yeah. The killing of these girls and the boy were not random. It was targeted, and they were stalked. Stalkers keep journals. It is just part of their nature. It's high. So there's a high probability that they were stalked and done this. That's why, when we look at other cases where that's not there. So just look at the assassination attempt at Trump, because people keep trying to figure out that boy's motive for what he did. And they keep thinking that it was about Trump. No, because if he was stalking Trump, there would have been journals about Trump. This was not about Trump. This was about him and his fixation with firearms proficiency and proving it to someone else. That's why there's no journals. There's no data. There's nothing where he was writing down his fixation, his manifestos. Yeah. And that's not there because it's a different kind of thing. But when you're stalking someone, the vast majority of cases, there are journaling because you are stalking, you're obsessed, and you're going to then take action on that obsession. And that's what I think we have here.
And today, search engine history on top of that.
Yes.
Which is going to add
part of that obsession.
A whole other layer to it. It'll be very fascinating to see where this goes.
All right, true crime addicts, let's cut the crap. You're knee-deep in the gory details of your favorite podcast when suddenly a commercial hits like a bad meal. Seriously? You deserve better. Upgrade to True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts, where you can binge without those annoying ads. Plus, get extended interviews that go deeper into the darkness and early access to episodes so you can be the first to know. It's like trading up from fast food to fine dining, but with more blood. So, go ahead. Search for True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe and feast on the good stuff.